Greetings, creeps, and welcome to Convo Fango. Today we are joined by Joe Cornish to talk all things Lockwood Co. Hey, Joe, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So this kind of reminds me of I'm getting like young Sherlock Holmes meets the X-Files with obviously the bedrock of
Mm.
like Ghostbusters kind of thrown in there.
Yeah, it's Lockwood Co. It's based on a pretty successful series of novels by a very brilliant writer called Jonathan Stroud, and it's set in a world that is plagued by ghosts. But these ghosts can kill you if they touch you, and young people can sense them sooner and better than grown-ups can. So as a result, all these agencies have been established, run by adults that send these young people into battle with ghosts, and ghosts can be repelled with metal and salt and all these various like base elements. So you end up with a kind of supernatural action adventure show with young people fighting ghosts with swords. Pretty cool, I think.
Pretty cool. I also would like to join one of the agencies. I think I'm too old. I'd have to like be sending the youngsters out, but you
I don't
know.
know. I think you could. It depends on what your talent is like, what your ability is like to sense the ghosts. That's what really counts.
Okay, I've got to like practice and see like what that is. Like what is my talent here? What can I bring to the
Yeah,
table?
exactly.
You kind of I feel like you often do this thing of like young protagonists. I know this is based on a novel, obviously, or a series of books, but I feel are you drawn to projects that have young protagonists doing battle with like, supernatural kind of forces?
Yeah, I mean, you're right that my first movie was called Attack the Block, and it's about kind of teenagers in South London fighting aliens with fireworks and samurai swords. Then my second movie was called The Kid Who Would Be King, which is about kids, a boy who finds the sword Excalibur and ends up, excuse me, ends up fighting zombie knights with a sword. And this is about young people fighting ghosts with swords. So there is kind of like a weird recurring pattern. I think it's more by coincidence than design, but I really like, when I was a young moviegoer, I really enjoyed seeing myself on the
Mhm.
screen, whether it was like in E.T. or the Goonies or even the Friday the 13th with Corey Feldman. Like there was nothing better than seeing somebody of my age on the screen, like or in a John Hughes movies. Like in modern movies, especially superhero movies, it's kind of always middle-aged people in
Mhm.
spandex. But I'm kind of trying to make the kind of adventure material that I would have really loved when I was a little bit younger than I am now. A
I
lot
love
younger.
that. Yeah. Like now I mean, that was some of my favorite stuff growing up, like everything you just listed, Goonies, I mean, Indiana Jones, we get short round, but like
Yeah.
all of that kind of stuff. Anything that involved kids and horror or adventure and kids, I was just like that was extremely my shit. And I've aged way out of that now, but I'm still really drawn to that stuff. Like there's something that's just inherently really fun about it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the Jeopardy's greater as well. And I think it also forces you to be a little more imaginative because you can't just go for the brutal stuff, so easily when you have young people. I think you've got to be a bit more attuned to the dramatics and to character and to being a little more careful morally with what you do. And listen, I'm the biggest fan of, out there hardcore crazy shit. But there's enough other people doing that stuff for me to want to do it myself. And I think when you tell stories with younger people in them, I think it maybe makes you be a little more thoughtful about how you go about doing things.
I see. It kind of sets the parameters for you. It's like, okay, you can play within this box. Now, what can you do creatively and while staying in this box, which is kind of a fun
Yeah, yeah,
exercise, I think, sometimes.
yeah. And there's also something really satisfying about bringing little elements of horror to audiences that might not have felt it before.
Mhm.
Like there's lots of bits of Army of Darkness in The Kid Who Would Be King.
Mhm.
There's lots of bits of American Werewolf in London in Attack the Block, and in Lockwood and Co. There's little bits of Lucio Fulci, little bits of grown-up horror from my imagination that have crept their way in. Because I really enjoyed when I was a kid in the 80s as well, movies that would slip a little bit of horror in, the beating heart
Yes.
being pulled out of the guy in Temple of
Yeah.
Doom or the head exploding in Raiders. Like it's lovely to just be the kind of entry drug for people in terms of horror. That's kind of a unpleasant way of putting it, but you know what I
That's the most pleasant way of putting it. It's kind of like a
mean.
sneak attack, which is some of my favorite stuff. But I think also, like, again, like when I was a kid, that's the shit my parents would let me watch. They wouldn't let me watch like R-rated horror yet. But if it was
Yeah.
like, oh, I think it's Indiana Jones. I think this is okay. And then there's like you said, like a beating heart, and it's just like, what the fuck? So like
Yeah.
your kid mind is like, you're getting away with something that maybe you're not really supposed to
Yeah,
be
it feels
doing,
a little
but
bit daring and challenging and
yeah.
aspirational. Yeah, and that's very much what we, what some of the great feedback we're getting from Lockwood and Co is that families are watching it together, like teenagers are watching it with their parents, sometimes quite sullen teenagers that don't usually watch things with their parents. This feels like something that they can all enjoy, which is,
Mhm.
it's not for younger kids because it might be a little frightening or intense, but it's family viewing, but with, I think, a bit of an edge to it.
Absolutely. There, you don't skimp on the horror elements for sure. Like
No.
there's some actually like it's like actually scary shit happening. It's not like I would like sit down like a 5-year-old or something and be like, okay,
Yeah, there's
unattended,
real
you can watch
death,
this.
there's real jeopardy, there's real danger, characters die, but the lovely thing about the books is it has all this jeopardy and danger, but it has this lovely cozy warmth at the center of it. The
Mhm.
relationship between the three characters, Lockwood and George and Lucy, these three young people who just live together with no parental supervision and have to support each other and be there for each other. And after they've been out ghost hunting and getting terrified, they'll come home and they'll have tea and donuts, and there'll be little bits of soap opera dramatics between them, but so there's like warmth and terror at the same time.
How did you come to this? Like, how did you come by the books? Did somebody say like, hey, you should check this out, or did you find it on your
Yeah,
own?
yeah. A producer friend of mine, Rachel Pryor, came across them and showed me the first book about 10 years ago when there was just one book. And we couldn't get the rights to them because a Hollywood studio acquired them, but the Hollywood studio then did nothing with them. And about 9 years later, there were then 5 books and they became available again. So we snapped them up, and we've adapted the first 2 for this first season on Netflix.
You said your time's up, studio. Well, we're gonna buy the rights now.
Yeah, well, come on, you gotta do something or hand them over, basically.
It's a
Yeah.
shit or get off the pot situation. Yeah.
I wasn't gonna say that. You said it, but that's exactly right.
That's
Yeah.
okay. This
Yeah.
is not a family friendly show, so you can say it. How closely does the show follow the books? Like, do you deviate at all from the books?
We deviate, yeah. We fill in little bits of backstory. We have to condense some stuff. We've switched like male characters in the book for female characters here and there. But by and large, we've tried to stay as faithful as possible. And it's been really rewarding actually to see
Mhm.
fans of the book say that they really recognize what we've put on screen as what they imagined when they saw the movie. So there are some differences, but we're doing this because we love the books.
Mhm.
So we really want to honor the books. Like I remember when I was a kid and I would read Stephen King books, I would always think, well, this is just a screenplay. Just film this. Why are you changing it? But then, when you're grown up, you realize that maybe the movie version of The Shining is more effective than the TV miniseries version of The Shining because it's being condensed and shaped and reimagined in certain ways. But for this, we really tried to stick to the book closely, and we only really condensed and changed when we thought we could improve it. Yeah.
Right. And that has to be the best compliment that you can get is from fans of the books to say, like, oh, yeah, you guys nailed it, or we're loving this.
Very much so. I mean, I'm sure there are some people out there that don't think that, by and large, the reaction has been really, really good. So yeah, we're really happy.
I mean, that's with anything. I could go post on Twitter right now that I love popcorn, and 100 people will say we also love popcorn, and then 50 people will be like talking about how terrible
Yeah,
popcorn
but it's
is.
it's always interesting to listen to all the voices because it might improve your popcorn making.
Oh, okay, that's a good. I will keep that in mind next time someone is shitting on my popcorn tweets.
Okay.
So you've talked a little bit about Attack the Block, which I'm a huge fan of. You're in the process of a sequel, Attack the Block 2. Can you tell
Yeah.
us anything about that?
only that we're working very hard on it. John Boyega and I, we have an outline, we've got the story and the scenes and the characters. We're just doing the research that's necessary to do it well, I think. You know, the first movie was a combination of high fantasy and almost like kitchen sink realism. So we're doing the kitchen sink stuff. We're going out into the world, talking to people whose experiences might overlap with characters or moments in the screenplay, and trying to make it as grounded as possible, as grounded as a film about aliens can be.
You can have both, though. You can, the grounding is what makes the alien part so terrifying, because it's like,
Exactly
I
right.
recognize this world, this is real, and now you're introducing
Absolutely. I think
terror.
that's the bit, you know, whether it's Aliens or Terminator or even E.T., like that combination of like, or Close Encounters, you know, the combination of realism and high fantasy for me is the most satisfying thing, because the more realistic the non-fantasy bits are, the more you believe it when the fantasy intrudes, I think.
Absolutely. And it's that bit you touched upon before about like where you see yourself on the screen. So when you see yourself on the screen and then terrible things are happening to that self that you see on the screen, just an extra bit of scariness to it.
That is the ambition. Yeah.
So are there going to be any child protagonists in this? John Boyega was a teenager in the first one. He's returning for the second one. No longer a teenager.
What I can tell you, and this is an exclusive, we are not going to digitally de-age John Boyega. We're not going to do any of that Benjamin Button shit for this film.
No Benjamin Button shit here. Okay. Yeah. So it's not going to be a prequel where he's like actually 8 years old in this one.
It is not, no.
Okay. You heard it here, folks.
That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, that's all we get. Okay. Well, speaking of sequels, do we get a second season of Lockwood? Do you know that yet? Can you tell us that?
We don't know. There's a very specific, rigorous protocol that Netflix go through with all their shows. There's a certain number of weeks that have to elapse before they make the decision. I think it's the same for every show. Who knows? We're just very, very proud of the series we've made. Yes. You know, if we don't get another series, there are these incredible books people can go to if they love the show to find out the answer to the questions that are raised in that season. If we do, we're very, very excited to bring the next books onto the screen.
I love that. There are a lot of additional mysteries set up in season 1, so I hope that we do get to see that play out on the screen in a second season and subsequent seasons.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to share with us before we go?
I don't think so. Just drive carefully and, you know, eat all kinds of different colored foods and be very careful on the stairs. Don't run down them. The vast majority of accidents happen in the home. Okay. And keep watching terrifying horror films.
Yay. And have your swords at the ready at all times. Yeah. If I've learned anything from your movies.
Have a sword on your head.
A sword. Okay. Yeah. As I unsheathe myself. With the sound effect. All right, ready? There's an audio delay. It's like fine. All right. Thank you so much. You guys check out Lockwood & Co. Season 1 is now streaming on Netflix. Yay.